Earth Foreigners Revealed: The Two Ancient Elites That Rule the World, Part 3, by Berk Gumus, December 7th, 2023.
In Part 1, I briefly talked about that the institution of human sacrifice in Mesoamerica with the Aztecs by the Black Brotherhood Giza intelligences was a component of monetary policy that began to emerge in ancient times, and that it also was, in some cases, a component of social engineering via religion. However, there were also other reasons for such brutal practices, and that lies within certain conceptions the ancients held of the physical medium itself. In other words, some aspects of religious social engineering arises out of the nature of the physic itself. The appearance of an organized spiritual technology, controlled by the priests, was attended in every country by a massive increase in human sacrifice. The Aztec massacres are notorious. The Druids in Ireland are said to have decimated the population. The innumerable sacrificial stones, carved with basins and channels for the flow of blood, and the traditional violent and bloody associations of so many ancient sites, confirms what is recorded of the slaughter carried out by priests in the interests of necromancy. Not all sites on the grid, however, were places where human sacrifice was practiced. This emerges in specific cultures, most famously in Mesoamerica with the Aztecs, and for specific reasons. In Mexico and the Andes, astronomically aligned, pyramidal monuments were used as part of the apparatus of sacrifice. In Egypt and Angkor, astronomically aligned pyramidal monuments were used as part of a Gnostic quest for immortality. In other words, from one and the same mythological cosmology, two entirely different practices subsequently emerged, which again in turn confirms the existence of two different paths and two different elites.
Their ancient day was not a great one. These ancient people only wanted conflict. Their ancient names are not really divine, but fearful is the ancient evil of their faces.
The Popol Vuh.
There is a darkness hovering over Chichen Itza, and it's called human sacrifice. The Popol Vuh makes it clear that both males and females were sacrificed within Mayan practice, and for the usual reasons, to guarantee fertility among the population, and so on.
The ruins of Chichen Itza.
One passage of the Popol Vuh records the gods' twisted delight in the smell of the burnt offerings. It has turned out well, your lordships, and this is her heart. It's in the bowl. Very well. So I'll look, said one death, and when he lifted it up with his fingers, its surface was soaked with gore, its surface glistened red with blood. Good. Stir up the fire. Put it over the fire, said one death. After that they dried it over the fire, and the Xibalbans savoured the aroma. They all ended up standing here. They leaned over it intently. They found the smoke of the blood to be truly sweet. A similar attitude to the aroma of sacrifice is recorded in the book of Genesis. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast, and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savour. Why, in Mesoamerica, would the practice of sacrifice arise on its famous grid sites? There are only two clues. The first of these is that, as mentioned above, that sacrifice was a kind of payment to the gods. This follows from the idea of the creation account in the Popol Vuh itself. Life was not a gift of the gods to man, but was merely a means to an end, mankind's perpetual service to the gods. Mankind was a slave, property, a kind of collateral to perpetual debt. The second clue is provided by the quotation cited above and by the following, and this is the sacrifice of little Huampu by Sibalanke. One by one his legs, his arms were spread wide. His head came off, rolled far away outside. His heart, dug out, was smothered in a leaf, and all the Xibalbans went crazy at the sight. Here the Xibalbans, the gods, are going crazy at the sight of the sacrifice, and this is consistent with the attitude cited earlier, that the aroma of the sacrifice was pleasing to them, an attitude we find echoed over and over again, in fact, in the Old Testament. Viewed objectively, it would appear that bloody sacrifices are understood to induce some change in the state or attitude of consciousness in the gods. This, plus the fact that at least in Mesoamerica's case, these sacrifices are being performed at grid sites, might be a profound clue as to why the practice arose in the first place.
The vampire gods.
Note to what was said in the passages above. 1. The Xibalbans savoured the aroma. They all ended up standing here. They leaned over it intently. They found the smoke of the blood to be truly sweet. 2. The Xibalbans, the gods, are going crazy at the sight of the sacrifice. 3. The aroma of the sacrifice was pleasing to them. 4. Bloody sacrifices are understood to induce some change in the state or attitude of consciousness in the gods. If one did not know better, one would think that the gods, not all, were vampire-like beings, with an insatiable desire for blood. Perhaps we can find a possible connection between the gods and their desire for blood in medicine or stem cell therapy. In medicine, when stem cells from young donors are transplanted into older recipients, these cells retain the youthful signature even though they live in an old organism. The Alzheimer's researcher Tony Wiss-Corey wanted to know if the brain can be rejuvenated by young blood, and for this he carried out experiments on mice. He connected the blood circuits of a young and old mouse. Like Siamese twins, they now shared the same blood, and behold, the blood of the young mouse made the old one fit again. Her brain cells worked better, neuronal stem cells were activated, resulting in better memory and less inflammation in the brain. In addition, her bones became stronger and their fur shinier. The Egyptian goddess Sekhemt was known for her taste of blood, and according to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, if a certain part of the soul, called the Ka, didn't receive adequate offerings, it left the tomb to drink blood. Sekhmet was said to be the daughter of Ra. An ancient legend tells of the end of Ra's rule on earth. Ra sends Sekhmet to destroy all humans that had conspired against him. The legend states that Sekhmet's bloodlust had not been sated by the end of the battle. Her thirst drove her to nearly destroying the human race. Ra poured out beer laced with red ochre so that it would appear as blood. Sekhmet drank the laced beer and became so drunk that she abandoned her murderous spree peacefully and returned to Ra. After this, Ra would refer to her as the one who comes in peace, naming a holiday in her honor, the Festival of Intoxication. Sekhmet would now also be known as the protector of the undead, a ruler of the underworld.
The Egyptian goddess Sekhemt.
The Hindu myths contain also a lot of stories of vampire-like demons, like the being called Pishacha, with red bulging eyes such as those of modern vampires. Pishachas are creatures from Hindu mythology that are nocturnal and hunt cremation grounds during the nights. They are also believed to have the power of shape-shifting and also becoming invisible. Apparently, they could also possess humans and drive them insane. With sunlight as an opposing force, The Pishacha is close to your standard vampire in many ways. Darkness-loving, blood-hungry, and carrying the overall appearance of a vampire doppelganger.
Depiction of the vampire like being